Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered if we're truly alone? I know I have. And tonight, I have a story that might just change the way you look at the stars forever. It's a story about an orphan, a little alien, and an old man who dared to open his heart to the unknown. Our tale begins not on Earth, but on a small, desolate planet light years away. Imagine a world bathed in the red glow of a dying sun, a place where dust storms rage and the landscape is barren and unforgiving. It was here, amidst the rusted husks of abandoned spacecraft, that a tiny being was left to fend for itself. We'll call her Lyra for now, though her real name, if she even has one, is lost to the whispers of the cosmic wind. Lyra was small, even for her species, with large, luminous eyes that seemed to hold the weight of 1,000 galaxies. She was alone, utterly alone, and more vulnerable than a newborn star. Lyra's story, as far as we can piece it together, is one of hardship. She was orphaned at a young age, left to survive on her own in this harsh environment. How she survived, no one knows. Perhaps it was a hidden resilience, a spark of life that refused to be extinguished. Perhaps it was something more. But survive she did, scavenging for scraps of food, hiding from the harsh elements, and clinging to the faintest hope that somewhere out there was something more than the desolate reality she knew. Imagine a child no bigger than your hand, facing challenges that would break the strongest among us. That was Lyra's reality. Weeks turned into months, and months into what seemed like an eternity. Lyra grew weaker, her already frail frame becoming thinner, her large eyes losing some of their luster. Starvation gnawed at her, the gnawing pain a constant companion. She wandered the desolate plains, her tiny feet barely making a sound on the cracked, dry earth. Each sunrise brought not hope, but a renewed struggle for survival. Each sunset was a descent into fear, the cold of the night amplifying her loneliness. She was a tiny spark of life flickering in the vast darkness of space, on the verge of being snuffed out. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a quiet, secluded corner of the world, lived an old man named Elias. He was a recluse, a man of few words, his life dedicated to the study of the stars. He spent his nights in his observatory, a small dome perched atop a wind-swept hill, his telescope his only companion. Elias had seen a lot in his long life, but he had never seen anything quite like the anomaly that appeared on his screens one night. It was a faint signal, a whisper from the cosmos, a distress call that seemed to emanate from a distant, uncharted star system. Elias, with his years of experience and his deep understanding of the universe, knew that this was no ordinary signal. This was something different. He pored over his data, his brow furrowed in concentration, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a pull, a connection to this distant signal. It was as if the universe was trying to tell him something, as if fate itself was guiding his hand. He felt an urgency, a sense of responsibility, as if he knew deep down that something extraordinary was about to happen. Driven by an inexplicable impulse, Elias packed a few essentials, fueled up his old beat-up truck, and set off on a journey. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew that he had to follow the signal, that he had to find the source of this cosmic whisper. He drove for days, crossing vast landscapes, his eyes fixed on the horizon, guided by the faint signal that pulsed from his receiver. He was like a moth drawn to a flame, compelled by an unseen force. After days of relentless travel, Elias arrived at a remote, abandoned research facility. It was a relic of a bygone era, a place where scientists had once searched for signs of extraterrestrial life. Now, it was just a collection of crumbling buildings, a monument to forgotten dreams. But Elias felt a strange energy here, a resonance that confirmed he was in the right place. He set up his equipment, his heart pounding with anticipation. He knew he was close, he could feel it. He adjusted his telescope, focusing on the coordinates of the signal. And then he saw it, a small, flickering light, a tiny spark of life in the vast darkness. It was Lyra. Elias gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A real, living alien, stranded on a desolate planet. He knew he had to do something. He had to help. But how? How could an old man, alone on a remote planet, possibly help a stranded alien light years away? Elias didn't know the answer, But he knew he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He had to try. He had to find a way. He had to reach her. He looked at the image of Lyra, her large eyes filled with a quiet desperation, and he knew that he couldn't give up. He had to find a way. He had to. But as he looked at Lyra, he noticed something else, something that made his blood run cold. In the background, behind Lyra, he saw a shadow, a large, menacing shadow, moving towards her. And it wasn't alone. There were others. What were they? What did they want with Lyra? And could Elias reach her in time? Elias's heart pounded in his chest. He zoomed in his telescope, the image of Lyra filling his screen. The shadows were getting closer, their forms indistinct, but their intentions clear. They were hunting her. But who were they? They didn't look like any species Elias had ever encountered, either in his studies or in the few fleeting glimpses he'd had of other things during his long nights of observation. These beings were tall and gaunt, their limbs elongated and spindly. Their heads were large and oval-shaped, with no discernible features except for two glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. They moved with disturbing fluidity, gliding across the barren landscape as if they were weightless. Elias felt a wave of panic wash over him. He had to warn Lyra, but how? He had no way of communicating with her, no way of reaching her across the vast gulf of space. He frantically searched his equipment, looking for anything that could help him. He needed a signal, a way to send a message, even a simple warning. But his equipment was old, outdated. It was designed for observation, not communication. He cursed himself for his isolation, for his detachment from the modern world. If he had stayed connected, if he had kept up with the latest technology, he might have had a chance. He glanced back at the screen. The shadowy figures were almost upon Lyra. She seemed oblivious to the danger, her attention focused on something in the distance. Elias could almost feel her fear, her vulnerability. He had to do something, anything. He grabbed his microphone, his hand trembling. He didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if she could even hear him, but he had to try. "Lyra!" he shouted into microphone, his voice echoing in the empty room. "Lyra, can you hear me? There's danger. They're coming for you." He repeated the message over and over, his voice growing hoarse. He knew it was a long shot, a desperate plea, but it was all he had. He watched the screen, his eyes glued to Lyra, hoping against hope that she would hear him, that she would understand. And then something incredible happened. Lyra turned her head. Her large, luminous eyes, which had been fixed on the horizon, now looked directly at the camera. It was as if she could see him, as if she could hear him. Elias gasped. He couldn't believe it. She had heard him. Lyra's eyes widened, and she took a step back, her small frame trembling. She looked around nervously, her gaze darting from side to side. She had seen them too. The shadows. Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. He had to warn her. He had to tell her what to do. But before he could say anything, the shadowy figures attacked. They moved with lightning speed, their elongated limbs reaching out like grasping claws. Lyra cried out, a small, high-pitched sound that pierced the silence. She tried to run, but they were too fast. They surrounded her, their glowing red eyes fixed on her. Elias watched in horror as the figures closed in on Lyra. He felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He was thousands of light years away, unable to do anything to help her. He could only watch as the drama unfolded before him, a silent observer in a cosmic tragedy. The figures grabbed Lyra, their long, spindly fingers wrapping around her small body. She struggled, kicking and squirming, but it was no use. They were too strong. They lifted her into the air, her tiny form dangling helplessly in their grasp. Elias watched, his heart breaking. He had failed her. He had found her, only to lose her. He felt a profound sense of guilt, as if he was responsible for her fate. He had opened his heart to her. He had felt a connection to her, and now she was being taken away. The figures began to move away, carrying Lyra with them. They glided across the barren landscape, their movements as silent and eerie as before. Elias watched them go, his eyes filled with tears. He knew he couldn't give up. He had to find her. He had to save her. But how? How could he possibly find her in the vastness of space. Where were they taking her? What did they want with her? He looked back at the screen, at the image of the desolate planet. The shadows were disappearing into the distance, carrying Lyra with them into the unknown. Elias knew that he had to act fast. He had to find a way to follow them, to track them across the vast expanse of space. But he was just an old man, alone in his observatory, with nothing but his telescope and his determination. Was it enough? Could he really save her? Or was he just a fool, chasing a dream that was destined to remain just that, a dream? As he pondered these questions, a new image appeared on his screen. It was a close-up of one of the shadowy figures. It was looking directly at the camera, its glowing red eyes piercing his soul. And then it spoke. Its voice was cold and metallic, devoid of any emotion. "We know you're watching," it said, "and we know what you're thinking." Elias froze, his blood running cold. They knew about him. They knew he was watching. But how? And what did they mean by, "we know what you're thinking"? What were they planning? And what did they want with him? Elias stared at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure's words echoed in his mind, chilling him to the bone. They knew he was watching. How? He had taken every precaution, cloaking his signal, masking his location. He was a ghost, a silent observer in the vast cosmic theater. Or so he thought. The realization that he had been seen, that he was now a part of their twisted game, sent a shiver down his spine. "We know what you're thinking," the figure had said. What was he thinking? He was thinking about Lyra, about her safety, about the desperate need to rescue her. He was thinking about the shadowy figures, about their motives, about the chilling emptiness in their eyes. He was thinking about the vastness of space, about the insurmountable odds he faced, about the slim chance of success. Had they somehow tapped into his thoughts? Was that even possible? The implications were terrifying. Elias felt a cold dread creeping into his bones. He was no longer just an observer. He was a participant, a player in a game he didn't understand, with rules he didn't know. He was a pawn in their hands, and they knew his every move, his every thought. He was exposed, vulnerable, and more alone than ever. He tried to regain his composure, to think rationally. He had to understand what they wanted, what their motives were. Why had they taken Lyra? What was so special about her? Was she just a random victim? Or was there something more to her, something that made her a target? He racked his brain, trying to piece together the puzzle, to find a clue, a hint, anything that could shed light on this terrifying mystery. He went back to recording of the abduction, studying every frame, every detail. He scrutinized the shadowy figures, their movements, their expressions or lack thereof. He examined Lyra, her reactions, her fear. He searched for any anomaly, any clue, anything that he might have missed. And then he saw it, a small, almost imperceptible glow emanating from Lyra's chest. It was faint, barely visible, but it was there. He zoomed in on the image, enhancing the contrast, trying to get a clearer view. The glow seemed to be coming from something she was carrying, something hidden beneath her ragged clothes. Elias's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the key? Could this be what they wanted? He felt a surge of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness. He had found a clue, a lead. Now, he just had to figure out what it meant. He spent hours analyzing the image, trying to determine the nature of the object. Was it a device? A weapon? A key? He couldn't be sure. But he knew one thing. It was important. It was what they wanted. It was why they had taken Lyra. He realized that he had to find out more about Lyra, about her origins, about her species. He needed to understand the significance of the object she carried. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. He delved into his research, scouring his databases, searching for any information about Lyra's species. He found very little. They were a reclusive race, rarely seen, their existence shrouded in mystery. They were known as the Zidonian, a name whispered in hushed tones among the few who knew of their existence. They were said to possess advanced technology, far beyond human comprehension. They were also said to be fiercely protective of their secrets. Elias knew that finding out more about the Zidonians would be difficult, perhaps even impossible, but he had no choice. He had to try. He had to find a way to reach them, to communicate with them. He had to understand why they had taken Lyra, and what they wanted with the object she carried. He looked back at the screen, at the image of the desolate planet. The shadows were gone now, vanished into the vast emptiness of space. Lyra was gone too, taken to an unknown destination, her fate hanging in the balance. Elias felt a renewed sense of urgency. He had to find her. He had to save her. He knew that the journey ahead would be dangerous, fraught with peril. He was an old man, alone, facing a powerful and unknown enemy. But he had something they didn't. He had heart. He had compassion. He had a burning desire to do what was right. And he had a clue, a faint glimmer of hope in the darkness. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. He would not give up. He would not rest until he had found Lyra and brought her home. He would face any challenge, overcome any obstacle, to save her from the clutches of the shadowy figures. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on the stars. He knew where he had to go. He knew what he had to do. He had to find his Zidonians. He had to find Lyra. He had to uncover the secrets of the object she carried. He had to stop the shadowy figures. Whatever their plans might be, he was ready. He was prepared to face whatever dangers lay ahead. He was driven by a single unwavering purpose: to save Lyra, to protect her from a darkness that threatened to consume her. He was her only hope, and he would not fail her. But as he prepared for his journey, a new message appeared on his screen. It was from the shadowy figures, and it was chilling. "You're coming for her," it said. "We know, and we're waiting." Elias's blood ran cold. "We're waiting." The message echoed in the silence of his observatory, a chilling promise of what was to come. They knew he was coming. They had anticipated his move. It was a trap. He had walked right into it. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had been so focused on finding Lyra, on uncovering the secrets of the object she carried, that he had overlooked the obvious. They were playing him, manipulating him, leading him into their carefully laid trap. He had underestimated them, and now Lyra's life, and perhaps his own, was in even greater danger. He slumped back in his chair, his mind reeling. He had to rethink his strategy. He couldn't just rush in blindly. He needed a plan, a way to outsmart them, to turn the tables. But how? They seemed to be one step ahead of him at every turn. They knew his thoughts. They knew his moves. It was like fighting an invisible enemy, a phantom that could anticipate his every action. He closed his eyes, trying to clear his mind, to focus on the task at hand. He had to remain calm, think rationally. Panic would only play into their hands. He needed to find a weakness, a chink in their armor. He needed to find a way to break free from their control. He thought about Lyra, about her courage, her resilience. He remembered the image of her, small and vulnerable, facing the vast emptiness of space, clinging to life against all odds. He couldn't let her down. He had to find a way to save her, even if it meant risking everything. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on the stars. He knew he couldn't give up. He had come too far, invested too much. To turn back now, he had to find a way, no matter the cost. He went back to his research, studying everything he could find about the Zidonians. He needed to understand their culture, their technology, their motivations. He needed to find a way to predict their next move, to anticipate their trap. He discovered that the Zidonians were not only technologically advanced, but also deeply spiritual. They believed in a cosmic balance, a delicate harmony between all living things. They valued knowledge, wisdom, and compassion. They were not a warlike race, but they were fiercely protective of their secrets and their way of life. Elias realized that the key to understanding their motives lay in understanding their beliefs. They had taken Lyra not out of malice, but out of necessity. They believed that she possessed something that threatened the cosmic balance, something that could disrupt the harmony of the universe. The object she carried, it had to be. It was the key to everything. But what was it? What power did it hold? And why was it so important? He knew he had to find out. He had to understand the significance of the object, not only to save Lyra, but also to prevent a potential cosmic catastrophe. As he delved deeper into his research, he stumbled upon a legend, a whispered tale among the Zidonians, a prophecy about a celestial artifact, a source of immense power capable of both creation and destruction. It was said to be hidden on a distant planet, guarded by ancient beings, its location known only to a select few. Elias's heart pounded in his chest. Could this be it? Could the object Lyra carried be the celestial artifact of legend? It seemed impossible, too fantastical to be true. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. It explained why the Zidonians had taken her, why they were so desperate to retrieve the object. He knew he had to find this artifact, not only to save Lyra, but also prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. The fate of the universe, perhaps, depended on it. But the location of the artifact was a mystery, a secret guarded by ancient beings. How could he find it? How could he decipher the clues, unravel the mystery? As he pondered these questions, a new message appeared on his screen. It was not from the shadowy figures this time. It was from someone else. Someone unexpected. "We know you're looking for the artifact." The message read, "We can help you find it." Elias stared at the screen, his mind racing. Who was this? How did they know about the artifact? And why were they offering to help him? He hesitated, unsure whether to trust them. It could be another trap, a ploy to lure him into another danger. But he had no choice. He had to take the risk. He had to follow every lead, explore every possibility. He replied to the message, asking for more information. And then he received a response that changed everything. "We are the Guardians." The message read, "We have been waiting for you." Elias's blood ran cold. The Guardians, the ancient beings who guarded the artifact. They were real, and they were reaching out to him. But why? What did they want from him? And what did it mean for Lyra? As he pondered these questions, a new image appeared on his screen. It was a map, a star chart, marking the location of a distant planet. "This is where you will find the artifact." The message read, "But be warned, the journey is perilous. Many have tried, but none have succeeded." Elias stared at the map, his heart pounding in his chest. He had found it, the location of the artifact. But the journey was dangerous, fraught with peril. He knew he was walking into a trap, a carefully laid plan. But he had no choice. He had to go. He had to save Lyra. He had to protect the universe. He prepared for his journey, knowing that he was facing the greatest challenge of his life. He was an old man, alone, facing unknown dangers, but he was driven by a powerful force, love, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. He looked at the stars, his gaze fixed on the distant planet. He knew what he had to do. He had to face the darkness, confront the shadows, and find the light. He had to save Lyra. He had to save the universe. But as he embarked on his journey, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that he was being followed. And he was right. The shadowy figures were not far behind. And they were not alone. They had allies, powerful beings who shared their dark agenda. And they were all converging on the same destination, the planet of the artifact. The final battle was about to begin. Elias's ship, a modified freighter he'd salvaged and repurposed over decades, hurtled through the vast expanse of space, guided by the star chart provided by the Guardians. The journey was fraught with peril. He navigated treacherous asteroid fields, evaded patrols from unseen forces, and faced the constant gnawing fear of the shadowy figures closing in. He knew they were coming. He could feel their presence, a cold, unsettling hum that vibrated through the very fabric of his ship. Finally, he arrived at the designated planet. It was a desolate world, shrouded in perpetual twilight, its surface scarred and barren. The atmosphere crackled with an unnatural energy, a palpable sense of ancient power. Elias landed his ship in a secluded canyon, camouflaging it as best he could. He knew he was walking into a trap, but he had no choice. He had to find the artifact. He had to save Lyra. He ventured out into the desolate landscape, following the cryptic clues provided by the Guardians. The journey was arduous, the terrain treacherous. He faced harsh weather conditions, navigated labyrinthine caves, and encountered strange, otherworldly creatures. But he pressed on, driven by his unwavering determination. Finally, he reached his destination, a massive, ancient structure, half buried in the earth. It was a temple, a monument to a long-forgotten civilization. The air thrummed with power here, the energy palpable, almost overwhelming. Elias knew he was close. The artifact was here. He entered the temple, his heart pounding in his chest. The interior was dark and cavernous, lit only by faint, ethereal glows emanating from the walls. The silence was deafening, broken only by the echo of his footsteps. He moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. He knew he was being watched. He reached the central chamber, a vast, circular space dominated by a massive pedestal. And on the pedestal, resting on a cushion of shimmering light, was the artifact. It was a small, unassuming object, a crystalline sphere that pulsed with inner light. But Elias knew that this small sphere held immense power, a power that could shape the destiny of the universe. As he reached out to take the artifact, a voice echoed through the chamber. "You have come far, Elias." Elias turned to see the shadowy figures emerge from the shadows. They were not alone. With them were other beings, tall and imposing, their forms radiating a dark, malevolent energy. They were the allies of the shadowy figures, beings who shared their desire for power, their thirst for control. "We have been waiting for you," the voice continued. "You have brought us what we seek." Elias realized the truth. The Guardians had not helped him. They had led him here, to this place of power, knowing that the shadowy figures would follow. It was a trap, a carefully orchestrated plan to capture the artifact. But Elias had anticipated this. He had known that the Guardians could not be trusted. He had prepared for this moment. As the shadowy figures reached for the artifact, Elias activated a device he had concealed beneath his cloak. It was a small, unassuming device, but it held a powerful secret. It was a disruptor, a device capable of disrupting the flow of energy, of creating a localized disruption in the fabric of space-time. The device emitted a pulse of energy, a wave of disruption that washed over the chamber. The effect was immediate. The shadowy figures and their allies froze, their movements halted, their forms flickering and distorting. The energy that emanated from them was disrupted, their power neutralized. Elias seized the opportunity. He grabbed the artifact, clutching it tightly in his hand. He knew he had to get out of there before the disruption wore off. He turned and ran, fleeing the temple, the shadowy figures and their allies frozen in place behind him. He raced back to his ship, the artifact clutched tightly in his hand. He knew he had to get away, to escape this planet, before they recovered. He reached his ship, scrambled inside, and fired up the engines. He blasted off, leaving the desolate planet behind him. He had the artifact. He had saved Lyra. He had averted a cosmic catastrophe. But as he looked at the artifact, he noticed something strange. It was glowing, pulsating with intense light. And then he saw an image projected from the sphere. It was an image of Lyra, but she was different. She was older, stronger, more powerful. And she was surrounded by other beings, beings who looked just like her, beings who radiated a similar energy to the artifact. And then Lyra spoke. Her voice was clear and strong, filled with wisdom and power. "Thank you, Elias," she said. "You have done well, but your journey is not over. Ours has just begun." Elias stared at the image, his mind reeling. What did she mean? What journey was she talking about? And who were these other beings? And then he saw it, a fleet of ships, massive and powerful, emerging from a hidden dimension. They were Zidonian ships, their forms sleek and elegant, radiating an aura of advanced technology, and they were heading towards Earth. Elias realized the truth. Lyra was not just a victim. She was a leader. She was a representative of her people. And the artifact was not just a source of power. It was a key to unlocking a new era, an era of intergalactic contact, an era of invasion. The Zidonians were coming, and they were not coming in peace. Elias stared at the approaching fleet, his mind struggling to comprehend the implications of Lyra's message. Invasion? Was that their intent? Had he, in his attempt to save her, inadvertently unleashed a greater threat upon humanity? The question swirled in his mind, a maelstrom of fear and uncertainty. He had to understand. He had to know what Lyra meant, what the Zidonians wanted. He tried to contact her, to reach out through the image still projected from the artifact. "Lyra, what is happening?" he pleaded. "What do you want?" Why are you coming to Earth? Lyra's image flickered, her expression unreadable. Elias, she said, her voice echoing newfound authority. You have played your part. You have reunited us with the key. Now it is our turn. But what key? Elias cried out. What are you talking about? What do you want from Earth? Lyra's image shifted, revealing a panoramic view of the approaching fleet. We seek not conquest, Elias, but connection. For centuries, we have watched your world, observed your progress, your struggles, your potential. We have seen the beauty and the darkness within your hearts, and we have decided it is time. Time for what? Elias asked, his voice trembling. Time for us to join you, Lyra replied. To share our knowledge, our technology, our wisdom, to help you evolve, to guide you towards a brighter future. We believe that together we can achieve great things. We can reach for the stars, explore the vastness of the universe, and unlock the secrets of existence. Elias stared at the image, his mind struggling to process her words. Connection? Guidance? Was this truly their intention? Or was it a carefully crafted facade, a prelude to something far more sinister? He looked back at the artifact, at the image of Lyra, at the approaching fleet. He didn't know what to believe. He had been deceived before, manipulated, played for a fool. How could he trust them now? But then he thought about Lyra, the small, vulnerable creature he had rescued from a desolate planet. He thought about her courage, her resilience, her unwavering spirit. He thought about the object she carried, the key to unlocking a new era. He thought about the potential for good, the possibility of a brighter future, a future where humanity could reach for the stars. And he realized that he had to take the risk. He had to trust her. He had to believe in the possibility of connection, of understanding, of a shared destiny. He contacted the Zidonian fleet, sending them a message of welcome, a plea for understanding. He offered his assistance, his knowledge of Earth, his willingness to bridge the gap between their two worlds. The response was swift and positive. The Zidonians welcomed his offer, acknowledging his role in reuniting them with the key. They expressed their desire for a peaceful contact, their hope for a future collaboration and mutual understanding. And so, the Zidonians arrived on Earth. They landed their ships in designated areas, welcomed by throngs of eager humans. They shared their technology, their knowledge, their wisdom. They helped humanity solve some of its most pressing problems, offering solutions to climate change, disease, and poverty. Lyra became a global icon, a symbol of hope, a bridge between two worlds. She shared her story, her experiences, her vision for a shared future. She spoke of the importance of compassion, of understanding, of respecting the delicate balance of the universe. Elias became her advisor, her confidant, her friend. He helped her navigate the complexities of human society, the intricacies of human relationships. He shared his knowledge of Earth's history, its cultures, its diverse populations. The Zidonians integrated into human society, sharing their unique perspectives, their artistic talents, their philosophical insights. They enriched human culture, broadened human horizons, and challenged human assumptions. The world changed. It was not a perfect world, but it was a better world. A world where humanity had taken a step forward, a step toward a brighter future, a future where they were not alone. And then, the final twist. Elias, while working closely with the Zidonians, discovered a hidden chamber within one of their ships. Inside, he found a series of stasis pods. And within those pods were humans. Humans who had been taken from Earth, not recently, but decades ago. Humans who had been experimented on. Elias's blood ran cold. He confronted Lyra, demanding an explanation. Lyra's expression was grave. These humans, she said, were chosen. They possess a unique genetic marker, a latent ability to connect with the cosmic energy that flows through the universe. We've been studying them, trying to understand their potential, trying to unlock their abilities. Experimenting on them? Elias asked, his voice filled with anger. We did what we had to do, Lyra replied, for the greater good, for the future of both our species. Elias was stunned. He had trusted her, believed in her vision of connection and understanding. But now, he realized that there was a darker side to the Zidonians, a side they had kept hidden. He looked at the stasis pods, at the humans within, their faces peaceful, unaware of the truth. He knew he had to do something. He had to expose the truth, even if it meant risking the fragile peace that had been established. He contacted his allies, a small group of scientists and activists who had been skeptical of the Zidonians from the beginning. He shared his discovery, his concerns. They agreed that the truth had to be revealed. Together, they exposed the Zidonian experiments to the world. The reaction was mixed. Some were outraged, feeling betrayed, manipulated. Others defended the Zidonians, arguing that their intentions were ultimately benevolent, that the experiments were necessary for the advancement of both species. The world was divided. Trust was broken. The fragile peace that had been established was shattered. Lyra and the Zidonians defended their actions, claiming that the experiments were necessary, that the humans they had studied were not harmed, that their abilities would ultimately benefit all of humanity. But the damage was done. The trust was broken. The world had seen the darker side of the Zidonians, their willingness to sacrifice individual lives for the greater good. Elias felt a deep sense of disappointment. He had believed in Lyra, in her vision of a shared future. But he had been wrong. He had been naive. He realized that the truth was not always simple, that good and evil were often intertwined, that even the most benevolent intentions could have dark consequences. He learned that trust was a fragile thing, easily broken, difficult to rebuild. He learned that even in the face of the unknown, even when confronted with the vastness of the universe, the complexities of intergalactic relations, the fundamental principles of humanity, compassion, empathy, and respect for individual life, must always prevail. And as he looked at the stars, at the vast expanse of the cosmos, he knew that the journey of understanding, of connection, was far from over. It had just begun. And it was a journey that humanity would have to take together, with open eyes, with cautious hearts, and with an unwavering commitment to the values that made them human.